So yay us and all across Alaska that we recognize that and support that. Happy to be here together this morning.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about pouring from an empty cup. All of us, especially educators, have had kind of a really big kind of interruption in the way they do things over the past year. And with COVID, you know, the most important thing I think at this point is to take care of ourselves. So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about taking care of ourselves. And I'm going to apologize now. I have your faces on this screen. I have the slides on this screen, and I have my notes on this screen. So I'm going to be kind of whiplashing back and forth as we do this. So bear with me, and we will get started. Can everybody see the screen? That's my first question. Awesome.
We just wanted to take this moment. As I mentioned, Sharon and I are in Juneau, and we are on the land of the Aquan people. And we want to pause and honor and respect that connection and relationship to land. And we really invite you to think, whose land are you on? Just take that moment to ground yourself in place and where you are. You know, we are talking about self-care today, and self-care is not a new conversation. Gosh, people have been taking care of themselves, nurturing each other since time immemorial. And so we offer this opportunity for you to think about, what are the self-care practices in your community, in the cultures within which you are living, in the families in which you are serving and working? And it's like this conversation and education is finally catching up to what communities have known and practiced for thousands of years. So we encourage you throughout our time together to be thinking with that perspective and lens. And in terms of how we are agreeing to come into this space together, we so much acknowledge that in every chair in our circle is a leader. And you are a leader because how you bring your whole self to this work, your multiple roles, your professional roles, yes, and then all of your roles in family and community. So please bring your whole self. Creating this space as a safe or a brave space for conversation. So making sure that there is room and time for each voice to be heard. Let's laugh, let's smile together. Our value of humor helps lift our spirits, helps us carry the load together. So our value of humor helps us. And take care of yourself today. So in our time together, do what you need to do to be grounded, be present here with us. And let's take care of each other as we move forward today. Speaking of bringing all voices into the room, let's do that. So in our gathering circle, if you could, we are thinking today about our cups, what we are bringing to this work. And our question for you is thinking about your cup, like doing a little self-inventory. What level is your cup at right now? Is your cup full because you have been getting this professional learning, you've been connecting with colleagues, and you're feeling energized and like you're pouring from this full container where you can offer to others? Or maybe your cup is pretty low right now. There is so much going on, both within our control, outside of our control. So perhaps you're pouring from an emptier cup. So we just wanted to do like a pulse check of how we're each doing. So Sharon, we're doing this in chat, are we? Yeah, so in the chat box, if you could type in your name, your community, maybe it's your school or your community, your role. Tell us roles outside of school and tell us what's your cup level, just so we can really honor where each of us is. And we welcome all cup levels into this space. So if you could take a moment, I'm going to pause and give you a chance to type that into chat. And again, if you are willing to tell us a little bit about your cup level, we'd welcome that. And also fine not to tell us that as well. So great. And Melinda, thanks for that cue to start the recording. Talk about taking care of each other. Appreciate that reminder.
Pat would not be happy if we didn't record.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome, Kristen. Thanks. Welcome, Suzanne. Glad to have you in the room. Thanks. Thanks, Lori. So we've got Matsu. Two folks. Welcome, Danielle. Thanks, Ginger.
Levels depend on the day. That is so true, Amy. So true.
Okay, so we have folks whose cup full stays full all the time, 3/4 level. Right, that prompt that more sleep would help with that. We've got, let's see, we've got parents in the room. We've got mutual aid organizer in the room, caregiver to parents. Okay. We've got lots of coaches in the room. Maybe we are each a coach in our different ways. So great honoring that role. Coach, cup is about half full today. Wonderful. Well, it does seem like we have all of our cup levels represented in our circle today, and roles. What a holistic group we are as we bring these roles into our space. Thanks for that. And thanks for folks who were typing in already those things that you are doing to focus on your cup level. So we'll really be building on those today.
Okay, we'll keep going. So educators are carrying a uniquely difficult burden right now. While dealing with your own uncertainty and stress and worry, you're also tasked with supporting and guiding others through the pandemic. We're going to talk about some strategies today that might help you maintain your strength and resiliency in the coming months, because it's not over yet. And so we need to recognize and validate grief, that everybody around us is experiencing some form of loss, that many difficult emotions you may be experiencing, like sadness or disappointment, anger, guilt, or frustration, or loneliness, are normal responses to abnormal conditions. And we are all grieving at some level. And with the grief, it's important for us to take a compassionate approach to ourselves, especially, and to those around us. We need to give ourselves permission to feel our feelings, whatever they may be, and recognize the common humanity around us. Kindness and compassion towards yourself is never selfish. It will help you maintain strength and resiliency and ultimately enable you to be more effective in your support for others.
So what we are doing in this session is really highlighting some of the overarching things that we can do to be raising our cup level, both for ourselves and for each other. And one of the things, if you were in our session just now on SEL, we talked a lot about this piece, about how do we stay in this present moment. We know that emotions come and go. In our last session, we were talking about how we can sometimes hold two emotions that seem so opposite, like being grateful and also feeling anxious at the same time. And so we have done, in our last session, we did some grounding activities. We focused on our five senses. Folks talked a lot about those physical things that people are doing to stay in the present moment. Um, and that is really the way we can get through this. We talked about the Headspace app timer. Somebody brought that forward. The Insight timer is something that I am really using a lot right now. There's a session Jack Cornfield and Tara Branch is doing on mindfulness in the workplace. And they are like 10-minute sessions each day. So I've been loving that. We talked a lot about developing an emotional vocabulary to be able to speak to our emotions. So those things that will help us stay in the present moment, help us fill our cup. Next slide, Sharon. And a piece of that staying in the moment is thinking about what we can control and what is outside of our control. And so we had some conversation in our last session about those things that we can't control, some of decisions made by administrators or our organizations, but really honing on the things that we can control right now. And could you shift to the next slide, Sharon?
Yep.
So really focusing in on our environments and what can we do in our environments to help us feel some control. One neat idea that came out of the last session was posting something of beauty that one helps us stay in this moment and helps us think about what we can control and connect to. So next slide, Sharon. Okay. And again, that mindfulness practice, that staying in this present moment can help us have that equanimity or that peaceful heart about those things that we can't control. So building in those workday resilience strategies is a piece of what can help us do that. Next slide, Sharon. And what we see on the slide here is a process that we can use when we get to our rational brains or our upstairs brains. So much of in this pandemic, it seems like for myself, I have been living in my downstairs brain, or if you know Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, kind of been living in this flipped lid state. And until we can come to this state, it's hard to do a rational process like you're seeing on the screen. So sharing resources about how to get to this place. And Sharon and I, in these two sessions, we've had highly technical visual aids. So here's my highly technical visual aid of the Anti-Anxiety Toolkit. I'll put in the chat this book. This has been great. Lots of strategies to help me stay in my body and in the present moment. A friend just gave me this one, which is great. The Lost Art of Relaxing. How do we really relax? So I'll put both of these in the chat box. And then once we get to our rational brains, this logical step-by-step process here where we can identify our thoughts, identify our emotions, can really look more at the facts, and then can sort out our thoughts and be like changing our thoughts. Move on to the next slide. So I am the master of my fate and the captain of my destiny. Next slide. And just for this slide, pay attention to the joy. How can I practice paying attention to the positive experiences? I just wanted to highlight two things. One, I was in a session where the facilitator had us ask the question, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where did we fall on that scale today? And what she said to set it up was, it's okay to be a 10. And if we are a 10, it doesn't say, oh, we're not impacted by the pandemic or things aren't hard. And so let's honor and like be a 10 if that's how we're feeling. And that was really important to me because sometimes I felt like I don't want to say that I'm doing okay because this is hard for everybody. And so I'm like embarrassed if I'm like, oh, well, I am a 10 today. So I just wanted to highlight that it's okay to be feeling joy. And in fact, we need it to be getting through this. And the other thing I just wanted to highlight was gratitude. So much of what I'm seeing is that importance of a gratitude practice right now, both for ourselves and for the young people that we're working with. So just wanted to highlight those two things on this slide. Next slide.
So another important piece, and this we talked a lot about in the SEL session, Heather and I did, we had some PE teachers, is to get active. Staying active is one of the most effective ways we have to stay mentally healthy and to cope with worry or sadness or isolation. If you're not used to being physically active or you have health conditions that make it difficult, physical activity may feel hard, and it's okay if you only do a little bit. We go for a dog walk every day, and my husband and our friend will usually walk another 100 feet or yards than I do. And it's like, I walk until I am ready to turn around, and that works for everybody. You need to set goals and track your goals for physical activity to help get you started. You know, when I look outside and it's dark or it's cold or it's raining, I don't want to go out there and do something, but I force myself to bundle up and go outside because there's times that, you know, I won't leave, you know, I work from home now. And so I won't leave the house for days, and that's just not okay. You need to get out, start where you're at, recognize what your resources and energy may be, and if you're depleted. The purpose of physically health activity, as we all know, is to get your heart rate up for 15 to 30 minutes a day, no matter what that might be for you. And don't wait to feel motivated. You know, my husband will just look at me and he's like, let's go. And I always feel better after I do some physical activity. So we need to make sure that, you know, we get that in our life and be creative. Most of us are not going to a gym right now, if that's where your activity was, but we all live in Alaska. And to kind of quote a PE teacher from our previous session, we live in a beautiful I can't talk this morning, beautiful state. And we just need to get out, be creative, and be consistent in what we're doing with physical activity. Invest in social connectedness. How can I invest in social connection when I'm not around other people? And that's, you know, that's a big thing right now, is that isolation that we have from friends and family. And it's really hard. And, you know, Zoom is like my connection to the outside world for the most part. You know, there's our bubble is really small. And so getting out there and doing things, or Zooming with family and friends, and, you know, write an old-fashioned letter. I got a really cool text from my niece in Philadelphia, and my godson, her son, didn't have school last Friday because of the weather in Philadelphia. And so his teacher said that they had to write a letter to somebody. And so I'm anxiously awaiting the letter that my great nephew is sending me for my birthday. I'm hoping that it'll arrive soon. And apparently the lady in Haines that became very, very popular because of an outhouse and a bear is somehow in this letter that my great nephew is writing me and mailing me. So I'm really excited to see what he has to say, because he's only 8. And schedule regular phone calls, and like I said, video chat with friends and family. That, the really weird thing is Zoom has become our connection to the outside world. When people, my husband, when the pandemic started, got on this puzzle kick. And so he'd be trading puzzles. And so we could go out on our deck and talk to people who would come by and exchange, and you put this little hook outside the door, and, we would talk to people from our deck, just kind of being creative in what we can do right now. And flexibility, having that right balance with ourselves and everybody else. There's, none of our schedules are the same. Nothing is as it was before. And, we have to have structure to help maintain and cultivate positive habits that promote health and reduce vulnerability, exhaustion, and hopelessness. We need to take time to create a schedule that feels feasible while also prioritizing your physical and mental health. I can't stress this enough. During the pandemic, we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. And we need to make sure that we're looking out for others around us and our students to make sure that they are also taking care of themselves. So now we're going to get into the triad constructionist listening. And Heather, do you want to explain to them what that is while I divide them into groups?
This is one, constructivist listening is something that I'm passionate about. I really love this process of creating space for each person to talk uninterrupted and to really be listened to. So we are going to move into triads. We might have some pairs, but hopefully our numbers are such that we can do triads. And so we'll be in that, and we have a question for you. Sharon and I have done a lot of talking, kind of setting the stage. We want to give you a chance to reflect on what you've heard. So the way we'll set it up is that each person will have 1 minute to respond to the question, and the other 2 people will listen, not ask clarifying questions, just simply listen. And if the speaker, finishes before the 1 minute, the group will just hold silence together. In that silence, the speaker might remember something they wanted to say. It might offer that sense of support just to be in silence together. And then once the speaker finishes, the speaker will rotate to one of the other people in the triad. Once each person has had their minute to speak, then it opens to group conversation about what you've heard. So Sharon, if you could cue to the next slide, it gives the questions.
Yes.
Right, so the question that you'll be responding to when you have your 1 minute is, what life balance goals have you set for yourself this semester? And how does what you just heard in talking or in looking at the chat, how does that help you achieve your goals? Once each person has answered that question, the group conversation question is, what helps you stay true to your life balance goals, especially when things go sideways? So I am going to, I'm going to pull the questions into the chat bar, because I think you'll still be able to see the chat when you go into triads. It can be helpful if somebody's willing to be timekeeper. My favorite way of being timekeeper is doing this. again, like the very high tech way of timekeeping is just for somebody to hold up their phone. So any questions about this? Each person will take their 1 minute to answer the question, what's on your mind about life balance goals right now? Each person will take their minute, somebody will time keep, and then your second question of what helps you stay true to your life balance goals will be a group conversation. Any questions before we move into
And we'll have 2 rooms that have 4.
okay. All right. So
And how long are we sending them out for, Heather?
let's see. Do we have time for like 11 minutes?
I think so.
Okay. So maybe
Let's do that.
Sharon, yeah, if you could set the timer for 11 minutes, and let me quick copy into the chat. So here's the first question. And then here's the second question. I did not see.
Everybody ready?
Yes, I have the questions in chat. And I would just say that constructivist listening, that first minute for each person can be really powerful. So I do highly invite triads and 4 groups to actually do that part. That can be really powerful. Okay.
All right. See y'all in 11 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. And Sharon, I see I'm in room 4.
Okay, so how did that work for everybody? Have you done something like that before? How did it work? Anybody?
Do you
I'll
mean
go, Sharon.
listening?
I think it went pretty good for us. We did lose Danielle right at the during the timekeeping part, but it worked out fine. And when she came back on, Julie and I were done talking, and so we didn't actually do the questions like we were supposed to. We all just pretty much talked for 3 minutes or so about all the questions. You know, educators can never follow directions, so that seemed to work pretty good for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what happened in our group too. I mean, we were really pressed for time, and then we were, you know, involuntarily catapulted out of our room when we hadn't quite finished.
That's the importance of timekeeping. Anybody who knows me knows I like to do things on time.
We lost our timekeeper just as we were getting started, though, Sharon. So we really got the double whammy.
Sorry.
Big excuse.
I don't know what happened. I was like, oh, I guess I'm in a new group now. I got swapped.
That was my fault. One group was down to 2, and you really can't do it with 2. So Vanessa was the sacrificial lamb to be moved to a new group.
We
I
did
was going to share that the 1 minute reminded me of something from the teen. I believe it was, I don't remember if it was teen leadership training, if it was the actual capturing kids' hearts with Flippin. But that introduction time where you would make a kid stand and they had to talk about themselves for 1 minute. And it's difficult, you know, especially for middle schoolers sometimes to stand up there and talk about something. It's a little bit easier when you have something to guide you. But I think this was, I don't know, maybe just for me, but kind of a hard topic to talk about because it's kind of personal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were asking you to kind of dive deep quickly with a group that that you didn't know. So thanks for being brave and jumping into that conversation. What were some of the, not personal details, of course, because confidentiality was one of our agreements, but what were some of the themes that you heard in your conversations or in listening to each other? Feel free to chat or to unmute.
I think there seems to be a trend at present to try and practice whatever helps the relaxation or mindfulness in short spurts. So because there doesn't seem to be enough time and thinking ahead to be able to do something more elaborate.
Yes.
We also heard a lot about mindfulness, and we did the 1 minute, which was exactly as you suggested, Heather. There was kind of a pause, and we just kind of held the silence, and then the person came back in and shared a few more things right at the end. So I really enjoyed that. One of the things that one of my group members mentioned was the importance of humor, which I really appreciated, and also textiles. So knitting and weaving and creating things with your hands as a way that, you know, it's meditative, but it's not, you know, it's not traditionally meditative, but it's meditative, and there's healing.
You can see My Self-Care has decided to join us today. If you saw the little puppy head, pets have been just kind of a whole new awareness of how important pets are in the last year.
I thought it was also interesting, and I missed half of my groups, what they had to share, but how we all look at balance differently. You know, when I think of balance, I think of balancing my roles of being a mother and a wife and a counselor, and finding that balance to make sure that I'm giving attention to all of those different roles, whereas others talked more about like mind, body, and spirit. And so it was interesting to me that we all looked at what is balance a little bit differently.
Yes. And we have in the chat box reminders to smile, eat clean, practice daily, or it catches up fast. Take time for ourselves.
And then Julie, I really appreciated what you put in the text about balance as boundary setting and being true to ourselves. So, wow, fascinating definitions and aspects of balance, all aspects of balance.
So what an activity I want you to do right now is either unmute or put in the chat box. What is your go-to balance, your go-to self-care? What do you do for yourself to achieve that joy and balance that we were talking about earlier? Play in the snow, music, get outside. What else?
Well, I could talk and not put it in the chat box. I'm just noticing all the birds that are coming to the bird feeders out here, and I was never into birds at all until I needed to be home a lot more. And so my husband has provided me with these 3 great bird feeders, and this spring I was able to see a downy woodpecker teach the baby woodpecker how to eat from the feeder, and that was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. And so it's not necessarily my go-to thing, but Christmas Day there was I think it was a pine grosbeak that came. We don't get them very often here. I live on Lazy Mountain, and so we don't get them very often where we are. But I was so excited, and it was just like God provided me with this great Christmas gift of seeing a pine grosbeak, and they're red, you know, they're just beautiful birds. And so I was just super excited. And birds they were never really my thing, but my kids laugh about it now, and mom and her birds. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with everyone.
We have a woodpecker that likes to try to hang upside down so he could get into our bird feeder. It's kind of funny. I've got hiking in the chat box, morning and evening walk, staying hydrated, nourishing meals. There's another bird enjoying birds. Flex your schedule and take time when you need it. Play with cats, play with dogs. And the family time. I'm sure my husband gets tired of hearing me talk in the back room. He's retired, so he's here with me. But he's like, I heard your teacher voice come out today. I hear every once in a while from him, which is kind of funny. Anybody else want to share? All right, well, we're going to move into the end of our session just and talk a little bit about some resources that we have available. And Heather, if you could put the PowerPoint, the PDF of the PowerPoint in the slide for everybody, that'd be awesome. In our Transforming Schools framework, there's also a link to this self-care wheel, which is really helpful, and some worksheets to go with it. This is something that you can do with yourself, or you could potentially do with a group. And that's a really helpful. There's an article that talks about the 7 types of rest you need to actually feel recharged, and what's your go-to form of rest. Is it physical? Is it sensory? Is it emotional? This was a great article that I found last spring about rest. And, you know, last night I was asleep by 8:40. I went on this long walk and then I was done. So it's really important to get enough sleep and to rest your brain sometimes and just kind of zone out. I don't know if anybody has any TV show that they like to watch or Netflix or something, but you know, since I was a little kid, my family and I have watched Days of Our Lives, and that's kind of my let go of everything and just meld into this soap opera that's as old as I am. And there's no thinking required. It's just kind of a rest of the brain. And that kind of dates me when I say I'm as old as Days of Our Lives. We have our Transforming Schools Trauma Engaged Toolkit that I think most of you might be familiar with. If you're not familiar with it, a lot of the stuff that Heather and I have talked about today is found in the self-care module of our toolkit. And so please check it out. It's on the department's website. We also have some other things on our website. Oh, if you want copies of it, either put in the chat box your name, how many copies you want, and an address to send them to, or send me an email. We're going to be packing up and sending out a whole bunch, over 500 of them next week. So I'd love to add you to the list. So if you'd like a physical copy of our framework for your entire staff, or if you have multiple staff, just let me know and I'll send those out. And here's some more great resources about taking care of yourself. What About You? A workbook for those who work with others. My Well-Being, Greater Good in Education. And, you know, self-care doesn't take a lot of time. You know, lots of people say, I don't have time, but it really doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes. And we talked a little bit about our e-learning trauma courses. We have one that is just on self-care that was released last spring that people have found very helpful. And there's many other ones on different topics. Here's our hands-on activities. These are what we call in our micro courses. They're 20 to 30 minutes long. But each one of these will give you a PDF that you can print out. And I'm going to show you an example. Like one of them, this is what it looks like. It's a whole sheet of PDF that gives you belly and fishy breathing and it tells you how to do it. And you can cut these strips out and use them with your students, or you can do this whether you're in person or virtual. And again, all of these courses will have a resource like that in them. And Heather. You want to tell them a little bit about our trauma engaged learning community?
Yeah, so we had this Tuesday Toolkit webinar series, which was in the fall, and we explored, each Tuesday we explored an aspect of the Transforming Schools Toolkit. And in that, folks wanted a way to keep the conversation going and to keep learning. So DEED and AASB have partnered with the Alaska Staff Development Network, ASDN, and are hosting an online learning community. And right now, that online learning community is focused on self-care, relationship building, family partnerships, and Sharon, we are seeing an Excel spreadsheet right now.
Oops. Sorry.
That's okay.
I never know when things are going to pop up, but I don't want to lose Julie's email.
Sharon's like already moving ahead with sending the frameworks out to folks, making sure she's got everybody's emails. So if you're interested in joining this online learning community, it's through the teaching channel. There are a couple of hoops to go through to join. So that's a bit of a pain, but worth going through those hoops to get into this learning community and discussion forums. Sharon pulled in the instructions, and I'll pull in a flyer if you want to pass out the flyer to other colleagues and join the learning community together. We'd love to have you there. Love to see you there.
And we're going to throw a little quote in here. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So we need to make sure that our cup is full, and we need to work with our students and their families to make sure that their cups are full also, and to help them through that process. So Gunishish, for everything that you've been doing and are doing and will be doing through this pandemic, and we hope to see you again at some point in time. And yes, this is my self-care right here. This is Izzy. She's a 2-year-old boxer, and she keeps my husband and myself on our toes and laughing all the time. So with silly things that she does. So I hope you all have a good rest of your day. We're going to let you go now so you can join another session at 11. And my challenge, and most of you have heard this from me before, is make sure you do something for yourself tonight. Something that's just for you, that makes you happy and makes you smile. Bye, everybody.